day, California, or good evening for many of you. Welcome to California Free Radio. I'm Mike Netter, and we're so happy to be here tonight. It's an exciting day across the United States and California, and I'm accompanied as always by Scott Piotr at TaxFighter7, with Kurt English with no social media presence to speak of. This is broadcasting live on LinkedIn under Mike Netter, on our Rebuild California groups, on Mike Netter, on Rebuild California, and our YouTube channel Outrage. We had a record-breaking number of viewers last week without giving you the number, but we're building momentum every week. I want to start off tonight's show with a little bit of celebration before we get to our guests. It was a good day. We had a few defeats, but what an amazing day. Trump's big bad tax bill passed. And for the average person out there, I want to give you two things. We'll get into this later. In my Netter News this morning, I had put a Steve Williams article out there detailing some of the highlights of it. But if you're a senior, like some of you out there, your taxes just went down. If you work in the service industry, at a restaurant, your taxes just went down. For many folks out there, your taxes just went down, and that's a victory. But also what's a really big victory for all Californians today is why all this is going on, the United States Senate passed the fact that California, sorry, Gavin, I'll do it whether you like it or not, you can't ban gas-powered cars because the rest of the country can't follow suit. And to quote a famous somebody somewhere, too bad for you. That is a huge victory, not only for Californians, but for the entire nation. So we have a number of victories that we're talking about, but we still have, as everybody knows, a large number of battles to fight. A huge number of battles to fight. But I want to take a moment, Scott and Kurt, before we talk about the battles and the star of tonight's show, which isn't you two co-hosts, what do you think of the victories that we've had over the last 48 hours?
Hey, I'm not tired of winning, if that's what you're asking.
Well, clearly, clearly Trump got most of what he wanted in the House bill. I don't think it included no tax on Social Security payments.
No, but I'm going to stop you 1 second. It did include.
Very important.
Hold on. Oh, this is important because we're all of that age, Kurt, or maybe not you yet because you're still a young man. But it included a $4,000 deduction for seniors 65 and over. So it didn't quite go to the Social Security route, but it includes a pretty big chunk for most folks.
Back to you. It wasn't everything Trump wanted. It was most of it. But the important thing is if this bill doesn't pass to make the Trump tax cuts from 2017 permanent, there would be a huge tax increase, and the Republicans would do less well in the 2026 midterm elections in the House and Senate races. Because it will pass the Senate, I predict, even though some people are whining about the getting rid of Medicaid fraud and that. When it passes, that will boost the Republicans' chances to gain seats in 2026 because the economy will heat up. I predict, and you can bank this in your video library, I predict there's going to be an economic boom the next number of years like the 1980s once that bill passes.
Hey, like you said, no tax on tips. So waitresses, waiters out there, and also no tax on overtime. So I can't tell you, I'm in the construction industry. I can't tell you how many people sit there and don't work overtime because their taxes seem to take so much of the chunk out of it. They'd rather spend the time with their families. But oftentimes their spouse is working an extra job or whatever just to make ends meet. And so with no tax on overtime, I think you're going to see a lot more people spending the extra effort, working that extra time so that maybe their spouse can stay at home full time. So big, huge deal.
I think it's also very exciting, and this kind of gets buried, of course, shocking in the mainstream news. And we're going to go into a lot of stories tonight that are getting buried in the mainstream news, including, is there a microchip to solar panels? Who is really running the country if it wasn't Joe Biden? And why are the people protesting in the streets who are protesting all the stuff that we as conservatives are doing, sponsored by, I'll leave that hanging for just a bit. But I think it's important to note that we have a huge victory alone in the fact that we discovered that California government can't just do anything it wants in terms of banning gas-powered cars. This got passed by the Senate today. Kevin Kiley, I'm proud to say he's a friend of mine. He put forth this resolution. It got passed by Congress and got passed bipartisan in the Senate today and is going to Trump's desk. So the 2035 ban for gas-powered cars in California is off. That's a huge boon too, for the economy and for everything else. Hey, if you want to buy an electric car, buy an electric car. If you want to buy a gas-powered car, buy a gas-powered car. If you want to buy a tricycle and ride around like Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, you can do that too. And I think for the guests we have...
Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, I forget. Oh, no, that's before my time.
Yeah, see, Mike's old enough to remember that show.
I am old enough to remember that show.
Know
and I'm also old enough to remember that when public schools actually taught something. Do you remember that? Reading, writing, arithmetic. And I guess, I know, it's kind of funny. I'm going old school on you. When you actually graduated with a diploma that you could read. Yes, indeed. I used to be able to read my diploma along with the rest of my class, even from college, and not wonder what the sheet of paper was for. I think it's important.
Wait, was that in cursive? Because they don't teach that anymore.
I don't know.
That's why I couldn't read it.
That might have been in cursive. All I know is that it was a glorious day for educators when they got me out of high school. And they seemed to have...
At least your teachers.
Yes. So my teachers were very happy. My college teachers were even more happy when they left.
Hey, you glossed over this. I don't want to interrupt too much, but that Congressional Review Act that they used to stop the clean air exemption. So EPA would grant California clean air exemption, allow them to put more onerous rules on the air quality, which required basically electric cars. But one of the things that also required in California was full-blown electric trucks. They don't even have one. There isn't a single one that's working. And yet they're mandating that all the trucks be converted to electric trucks. So that means if you're a trucker and you maybe operate out of Tennessee and you're going cross country, you won't be able to come into California with a gas or diesel-powered truck.
They mandated electric locomotives that don't exist yet. But drifting back to our core subject here, we'll have plenty of time to talk about.
Environmentalists are pulling their hair out.
Back to the white light, as they say, which I hear quite often at my age. Wake up screaming. The Californians tried to do a lot of regulation in education, which frankly is, for everyone out there, if you're not paying attention, and I'm going to go on a soapbox before we introduce our guest.
Indoctrination, not education.
Nothing, I'm going to say it again, nothing is more important than the next generation behind us and keeping them educated. And before, I want to make a point here I've made on a lot of shows. We as conservatives who have jobs and have raised kids and bought homes and done things, why we've been doing that the last 20 years, the left, which includes many Democrats, but not all of them, have been working on penetrating our institutions. And we turned around about 5 years ago, how did this happen? How did our school boards get polluted with people that are carrying, flags with sickles on them and stars? How did all this happen? It happened because we were not paying attention. And so tonight, I'm really happy. Dan, bring in our guest, Sonia Shah, and I'm going to let Sonia tell. Sonia, it is so delightful to have you here tonight. For starters, I have to do less work. But in addition to that, I want, for everyone out there, if you don't know, Sonia is a star. I'm going to let you tell your story, but I want to start off with one of the battles we need to fight coming up in the 2026 election is kind of one of the forgotten 8 state offices, and you're running for one of those forgotten 8 offices, and tell us what that office is.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. And it's a pleasure to be here. I am running for the California State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and you are 100% accurate when you say that people have forgot about this seat, but it is such an important role especially when you hear all this stuff and all the good stuff that Trump and his admins doing in the Department of Education. The state superintendent oversees the California Department of Ed, and we all know they get a big fat F because they have not been involved in best student outcomes. Our students are failing at reading, writing, and math, just as you mentioned, and they're not having the critical thinking skills and the opportunities to go out and actually be something when they get out of high school.
But you know, it's interesting, Sonia, because the people that are running, thank you, Scott's always right on there. Newsom got it. And by the way, in case you don't know it, the public schools are so bad, they couldn't even actually teach Newsom to read because he has dyslexia. So I always say it's rather frightening to have a governor who admits by his own admission he can't read. But let me come back to the white light. You know what's fascinating to me, Sonia, is that it just wasn't enough for the people in the school system to have our kids fail at reading, writing, and arithmetic. They decided that they wanted to entirely pollute the morals of our children and balance out what we used to call boy girl in any way that we want to. Explain to us, for our audience, the fighting that you have done, what you do now, and how you've done it. And then Kurt and Scott are going to pepper you with questions like a quiz show.
Okay, I love it. So you're right. Again, when it comes to just common sense, that's where, again, I say Newsom, Bonta, Thurman get an F. Look, the Department of Ed is supposed to oversee and they're actually supposed to give the sites, which, the local school districts, the help. But again, we haven't been paying attention from the very beginning. I mean, I was the room mom, art mom, PE mom. I was in the classroom mom, anything that you needed mom. I was there for the school. But when the shutdown happened is when I got involved in a whole different aspect of what was going on. And a lot of parents don't even know what a school board member is. I did become a school board member because our school board members were not listening to us and they were not focused on education. They were focused on all these ideologies being pushed into the classroom. And a lot of that is rooted from what a lot of us are fighting against. And that's the big unions, right? You see how the unions are paying a lot of money in elections these days, especially for local school board seats. The seat that I ran in back, 3 years ago, they spent alongside special interest, $150,000 in total, right? That is a lot of money.
Whoa. How much?
The person that we ran against, who was an incumbent, who was deeply tied to, even the Biden admin was, you had attorney generals donating to her. It was all special interest money, but the unions were dumping money and it totaled to $150,000. And that's without even PACs that we were aware of. We don't even know.
On a school board seat?
150,000, Mike. I could show you the paper.
No, I believe you. How much does a school board seat pay?
You want to know how much I get a month? I get a little over $800 stipend a month.
Okay, so nothing to see here, everybody out there.
Yeah.
When I talk about the left building institutions, and I knew this already, but I want you to drive the point home. The left spent $150,000 to defeat people like Sonia for a job that pays $800 a month. Kurt, you've got 1,700 degrees or something like that. Does that sound like a really wise business investment?
Of course.
Well, I'm going to question your premise, Mike. They're not doing it as a business investment. They're doing it to indoctrinate our children so they will grow up and be good little big government lemmings and be, frankly, perverted because they're sexualizing children. They're trying to tell boys it's okay to pretend to be a girl when it's not okay. It's not okay. It's child molestation. So there's a political agenda. It's not about the money.
You're right. And guess what? The state superintendent is also in bed with all these special interest groups, and they're the ones that are getting all of the money. I mean, you're talking about $119 billion on average that the governor budgets into education. And look, 47% of our kids are illiterate when they graduate. That's horrifying. But if you actually go deep down in there and you see what our state superintendent is doing right now, and also the ones that are running for this position, are completely doing the same, because a lot of them are assemblymen and other pieces of work, that are destroying our kids. It's all special. It's like a funneling, right? I swear it's like a mafia. They're funneling money to all these special interests and they're fighting tooth and nail. I mean, you see, tampons in the boys' restroom. You see, Trevor Project, which is a nasty, they have a chat that they've been caught a lot of times with we call it the groomer site as far as parents do. You see all these special interests are actually tied into the education. They're getting money, right? They're sucking our kids in. So the money is being tied into keeping these special interests, their pockets deep. You saw the hearing yesterday.
Well, Sonia, in addition to that, the legislature is trying to pass a bill to force every school, public and private, to put that Trevor Project information on every student ID.
And guess who endorses that?
Put that in perspective a little bit too, though. Sonia, you said your district only had about 26,000 students. So they're basically investing about $6 per student to try and get their guy elected. Now, let's be fair. Their guy, you guys, the school board, you guys vote on the salaries of the teachers. And so it's not a business decision in the sense that they're going to make money, but it is a money issue, right? The CTA wants money for their teachers, and they're basically voting for their bosses so that their bosses will give them a raise. It's very corrupt between, like you said, some of the vendors that are doing all these programs that are corrupting our kids and the teachers that want money more than they want to teach kids.
But Sonia, setting the table, you more than just ran for school board, and everyone out there, if my X feed, my LinkedIn, Facebook, and Rebuild, you really have to look up. Sonia isn't here tonight simply because I wanted to do less talking. That's never going to happen. Sonia is here tonight because of not only what you're going to accomplish, but what you have accomplished, and explain to folks out there what that is.
Absolutely. And I also want to just take note, Mike, I'm a mom. I'm a mom that cares. I used to be a small business owner. I always dreamed of being a full-time stay-at-home mom. I did side businesses to make sure, our family didn't go under here in California, underwater. But when I got involved, it wasn't just for my kids. Look, my kids were safe because they had us. When the shutdown happened, we took them out and put them in a charter school. We learned what the charter school world was. We learned that we had different opportunities, but not all kids have those opportunities. I grew up in a household that didn't have those opportunities. My mom was a heroin addict and eventually led to her death. My dad was from another country and he worked 7 days a week, to provide for us kids. So with that said, when I got into this fight, it wasn't just for my kids. Of course, they're my reason and they're my everything. But when I see these kids suffering all throughout California, that's why I got in. Obviously, it's not for the $800 that I would get, a month doing this, because that doesn't even cover my insurance or my gas going to all the events that we did. I mean, we just graduated over 2,200 kids in our own district. I mean, it was a beautiful thing to be part of that, right? But again, here's the thing, like when us parents got involved, we said, okay, that this school board is also part of failing our kids. You see, we'll go back to special interest, the publishers of these books that are pushing the ideologies into the schools. Do you know one of the publishers, do you remember my friends in Temecula, Joseph and Jen, Joseph Komorowski? Remember how Newsom went and started attacking them for banning CRT? Guess who contributed to Joseph and Jen's recall? The book publisher. He personally contributed to it. So you're telling me that these people don't have an interest? They want the school boards to be on board to adopt the curriculum in these books. It's like a big giant circle, right? And that's where, when parents started to get involved, especially in our own community, we saw a need to start getting really deep into this. I never ever imagined myself being in politics till I realized I have a moral obligation to protect these children. I will tell you this, what Tony Thurmond and our state superintendents for the last 70 years, we've been on a rapid decline. I mean, they oversee even property for schools. What are they doing right now? They're taking that property and they're making it housing for, teachers or whatever it may be, but also that's tied into what they call community schools. Eventually, their plan is to get rid of school boards, get rid of elected members because of people like me and Jen and Joseph and my friend Madison that was, recalled. We have Candy. We have so many people that are coming to the fight. They're like, they have to figure out a way to get us out now, right? Because we're a force to be reckoned with when it comes to protecting kids.
But I want to come back to the curriculum thing in 1 second here, because there's something that a lot of people don't know. Scott, make a memo because this is really important and used to be unique only to California, but it's unique in about 15 states now. Let's bookmark that for 1 second. That's an incredibly important point that you bring up in the nation's most populous state. But let's talk about how you beat Rob Bonta. And unfortunately, that's a metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
First explain. Okay, so Rob Bonta is our so-called attorney general, and he
Yes.
is more of a politician than a real, law enforcement officer. But what did you do that caused him to want to pay attention to your school?
What did I do to piss them off? I wanted to protect kids. I wanted to bring back parents into the picture and bring that trust back that was broken during all the lockdowns and the extended shutdowns that Newsom and the rest of them were responsible for hurting our kids with, right? So what I did is Bill Aselli, you guys know him, right? Assemblyman.
Oh, very well, yes.
Yeah.
Want me to call him?
Former assembly.
Former
He's now, and in fact,
now
we've got a great
appointed.
story on him tonight that he's doing. We'll get to that later. Stay tuned. Sally just did something amazing. Back to you, Sonia.
So for me as a mom, I started watching the laws that require, tampons in boys' restrooms, all these crazy laws. As parents were starting to get involved and actually watch them because we had no clue. We weren't paying attention. And Bill Aselli had proposed a bill that said when a child wanted to change or identify as the opposite sex, their parents would be notified, and that would be made a law to require the districts, because the districts are participating in the social transition of these kids, and they're not notifying the parents. That is the actual truth, 100% accurate. Every district has a gender plan because it's AB 1266. It's a law that requires districts to go along with whatever the child identifies, right? So with that said, Bill's Bill did not get a hearing. And when he found out, I was putting a support letter out, he said, Sonia, you guys can pass a policy. And I was like, oh, heck yeah. I'm a newly elected member. Policy is my game. That's my responsibility at our school district. So a coalition was formed. We had, elected members. We had group leaders, people from my church. We had attorneys. It was a great group of people of all different walks that wanted to protect kids. We made a mindful policy. I kept telling my superintendent I was going to bring it forward, but he kept telling me it was illegal, and I kept telling him to show me the law. Long story short, couldn't show me the law. Ding, ding, ding. We brought it forward. We passed it because at that point we still had one board member that we finally got out of here this last election. But we passed that policy, and boom, we find out on the news and from other people we were getting sued, because that's how they work, right? They don't actually serve you until they go to the news and make a big dramatic thing of it. Bonta said he was suing our district, and we were quote unquote breaking the law. Remember the law that they couldn't cite, and never ever did he cite any laws. Long story short, we had a long court battle. I sat there, and I also now as a mother saw how our court system was also used against us. People, that are hoping that they would do the right thing. I heard a judge, talk about the feelings of the state superintendent. Then he did more about him than he did about the legality of the policy. He was more concerned that I supposedly, I didn't kick Tony Thurmond out of our meeting, but when Tony tried to grandstand our meeting, I told him to take a seat, and he's not going to do that here in Chino. I don't know if you guys saw that clip, but it did go viral, and Tony lied about things, which it did go nationwide. And I would do it again today, because Tony does need to take a seat, and he needs to get away from our kids because he's ruining our kids. But we did win. We had two great big wins in court. They kept saying a child has a right to privacy from their parents. And guess what? Even in California court, that was determined incorrect, right? And we had an injunction on the wording, because they said it was, we were discriminating against one group, which we weren't, because there was policies that kept secrets in regards to this. So whatever, it's California. We went back to the drawing board. We found the gray area, and we came up with a new policy, presented it, and we still notify parents till this day at Chino Valley, right? So we did win that. In response to districts like ours, they brought AB 1955. That is the law that prohibits teachers. It prohibits school board members, school districts requiring the notification. So teachers can do it on their own. But we also see how that goes, because my friend Jessica Tapia got fired for saying she wasn't going that is secret. So that is a lie again. AB 1955 was just a way to gaslight the rest of the districts and scare them into submission to not pass the parent notification policy that we still currently have. And if Bonta can touch it, we know our district will be the first one to, go after. But we did also bring mindful policies to get sexually explicit books out of the libraries easily if they were to appear there for some odd reason through donations or teachers. And I never like to put teachers in the same bin as the union activists. Look, there's great teachers, but there's also union activists that are hell bent on hurting our kids. And we also got
all teachers are bad.
our classroom. Yeah.
A lot of teachers do love kids. Yeah, I agree.
Yes, they do. And my mother-in-law was one of them for 40 something years. And I love her because, she gives her all. And I obviously link arms with so many of our teachers that their union wouldn't even protect them during that time where districts were possibly going to mandate. And actually some districts did the vaccine. But with that said, we've done a lot. We only fly the California flag, the United States flag, and military flags, and any other flag that has to do with the curriculum here in Chino. And that's where I say I want to start bringing policies, not only towards education, but stop giving the state superintendent the driver's seat to partner up and pushing these ideologies in the classroom. If we get somebody like me up there that'll fight the good fight, I have a proven track record to not back down, even when it gets a little crazy, right? I mean, death threats are a normal thing in our house, unfortunately. People are crazy when it comes to kids.
Hold on one second. For all the comments sent on the screen, hi, Bonta. Please, if you have children in the room, hide your eyes. Scott is putting up. Scott, we're not supposed to put up pornographic material.
I want to jump in here. Death threats? Did you say death threats,
yes,
Sonia?
She did.
Multiple death threats. Multiple. I mean, even from other states, believe it or not.
Yep.
Wanting to chop off my arms and legs.
We got him during the recall too, just for trying to recall Devin.
I'm not alone.
Boy, I hope you're communicating with the DOJ and the FBI and go after them hard.
Yeah, it's hard in California, let's be real, but we now have some help, so it's starting to see a little bit of turnaround. But Bonta never, I've sent him messages like, why aren't my kids a concern for you? You're talking about the safety of kids, but yet my kids have been threatened by their life, even letters to my house. So they obviously are telling me that they know where I live, right? But long story short, look, at the end of the day, they could threaten my life all they want. It just makes me dig my feet a little bit deeper in that sand, because it shows me if my life to them is worth taking, that means that's how bad they want our kids and control of our kids, right? And I would be a coward to duck away from that. So for me, it's like, no, I mean, you've seen the girls with that we're fighting for right now in CIF, right? With the boys winning their titles and their placement. Yeah. I mean, I've been given a cease and desist by the mother.
Sonia, just last weekend, a girl from Crean Lutheran High School in Irvine won the triple jump.
Yes.
But they gave the award to a boy who was competing with the girls.
Yes. I've talked to those athletes. Me, Sophia, and Jessica have been on the front lines fighting that. The mother even got in my face and pretty much told me to shut up. And I was like, no, I'm not going to. And your cease and desist didn't do anything. I ripped that up too. I'm like, it's in the trash where it belongs. You're not going to stop people like us that are fighting the good fight to protect kids from telling the truth and doing.
Does she have a son pretending to be a girl in girl sports?
Yes, she does. And right now, 2 days ago, I got another complaint. Our district got they call it a UPC, a uniform complaint on me and another student, which, I will fight the fight for that student. She couldn't come after me all she wants. She wanted me investigated. She wants a formal apology. She wants CPS to be called on me and other agencies to be called on me. And I'm over here like, are you kidding me? Like, it's mind-blowing, but it shows us where we're at.
So one of
Sonia, that sounds like extortion, where they're threatening you to not exercise your legal rights with criminal prosecution. That sounds like extortion.
First Amendment right?
I want to jump in on something here, because on our show we call it California Free Radio, to talk about something which isn't talked about a lot. Why this is happening to begin with. Look, 99.9999 and 6 decimal points over of people watching this agree that boys are boys and girls are girls, and that if your child comes in wanting to be called by a different name, the parent should be called in the classroom. And certainly, back in the day or any day, that anything that shows any genitals at all really doesn't belong, shall we say, below high school, and I'll question junior high, but let's put that down. So I want to talk about two things that you brought up. I don't normally talk about personal things a lot in this show, but I want to give you something here. My mom was Teacher of the Year in San Diego in 1986, and she served, got called on to serve on the school textbooks committees when I was a young man. And people like, I'll leave the publishers nameless, were actually offering her bribes. Two things I want to go into here.
Wow.
Well, we got to understand something. Not every state, Sonia, you may know this, I think it's only 15 states, California the biggest, demand that all the public schools use a singular textbook. So whether it's a math book, it's a book on sex education, this is a pretty big market, okay? So when they introduce a new subject, be it like why Sammy should be called Sally, why your genitals should be fried in an egg pan, whatever they make up, if they get it passed, it's incredibly large money. And right, Sonia? Incredibly big money in a state this large. It's like dealing with the mob. And I also want to add, and I've reported on this before, that the business of, I'm going to call it sex change, okay, is a fast-growing business for corrupt doctors out there. They don't give a damn about the kids. It's hit $1 billion plus and is growing with a bullet. So I want to put on the table that the people fighting Sonia, and I get it, some of these parents get misguided because they're misguided by forces which are driven by money, okay? And even people that produce gay flags, okay? If they could produce a lot more flags, Kurt, you've got a business degree amongst your 12, they're going to make a lot more money. And the more flags that fly, the more money that they make. Back to the point why they would spend $150,000, not because they believe in the ideology. It's all about, follow the money. Sonia, back to you. I want you to weigh in on that, especially the curriculum portion of it, because not many people realize that in California.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the California Department of Ed is responsible for the framework, which is the curriculum, right, that goes down to the districts. And again, I'll go back to what they're trying to put into the classroom. You've seen the ethnic studies things, right? The ethnic studies was a requirement that was passed in legislation. They said that now we have to do it, but guess what? It's also on hold because they have no funding for it, right? So all these districts are still doing it. I mean, Oceanside and LA Unified have been, San Diego obviously is part of the Oceanside district. They have been the most horrific in regards to the ethnic studies curriculum, right? The curriculum that they're including has nothing to do with, our backgrounds and being, fair at teaching kids about different ethnicities. It has nothing to do with that. First of all, I'll go back to why that class is bogus to begin with, but they're using it as a gateway to bring in the ideologies. I've had moms from not only Oceanside who their kids were told, about the being white is a horrific thing and you did this, that, and the other, but also we go to LA Unified and through ethnic studies, they're pushing the trans and all that other kind of ideologies through there under the ethnic studies curriculum. And these parents are in tears because they're like, what do we even do? And a lot of them are actually coming from other countries. And so they're trying to get help, right? And they're just being shut down. The thing that I say about ethnic studies too, especially making it a requirement, you already have in high school a requirement called the health class. That was so they could push anything sexual in there. By then you've already taken sex ed. Why do you need another class in high school? It's because they want to push all that other crap into there. And, if you don't have districts that are trying to gatekeep, you have them bringing in all this really horrific things that are not helping kids. They're actually damaging them. But again, by high school, our kids should have already learned how to read, write, do math. They should all be on a pathway for the 4-year, or they should be on a pathway to technical career. I sit on our technical career at Baldy View. I'm a commissioner with 3 other districts. Look, by high school, we should have already sat with that child and said, "Hey, what is it that you want to do? Okay, you want to be a beautician? Cool. We have all these courses. By the time they get out of high school, they could be working. You want to be an electrician? Great. You want to work for UPS? We have partnerships with them. Why aren't districts using the money for that? Instead, they're pushing this nasty curriculum, right? And they're failing at the basics. Again, let's go back, Mike. 47% are failing. And even 4th and 8th grade in the nation, I heard Linda McMahon say yesterday, are still not literate. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And then they're foaming, the unions and all the special interests are foaming at the mouth because, the federal department is cutting. Well, let's be real. The federal department is only about 1/10 of the funding for, the states.
And we're obligated to spend, and I want to look, it is, I don't think anybody who's sane, it doesn't include the people like Rob Bonta, the Democratic administration, but anybody who's sane can argue that the results of the California school system are horrible by any metric that they go by. I mean, until Alabama got pencils, I think they were barely beating us. Okay, nothing against Alabama, but you get the drift, right? But I think it's important to note that, again, like the teachers union, and frankly, it's like about anything I talk about, Sonia, you've got things that have grown too big. The textbook or curriculum business in California is too big an industry. The gender ideology, sex change industry has grown big and people are making money up. CRT is a portion of the curriculum industry. They get a book in, they write a book, you're making some pretty big bank. But before we let you go, let's talk about going forward. Because again, if most of our audience went to public school, we have short attention spans. And talk about the job that you're running for and how you can affect some of those. Scott, do you have a comment or are you having a stroke?
Comment. Of course,
you never tells,
It's hard to get Mike's attention sometimes.
Go ahead.
But remind people, I mean, you ran for school board in 2022. You flipped the board, right? You had a 5-person board. You put 3 conservatives, including yourself, on there. That's what enabled you to do a lot of the things that you've done.
Yes.
And then in 2024, you got the other 2 seats, right?
Well, there was 3 up. Remember, they kept saying they're going to recall me. And they obviously didn't. And the 3 that we put up, because they could have switched our board back this last election. They could have flipped it. They could have took away, they said, let's shut Shaw's jaw. Well, that didn't happen because we not only retained those seats, but we gained that one because it was a 4-1, that last election cycle prior. So we now have a 5-0. What does that tell you? The community is behind us. The majority's behind us.
Right. You're doing what the parents want to do. So tell us what you're going to do in the state superintendent job.
I'm going to bring everything we're doing in Chino and the other good districts that are around California. There's so many ones that I have linked arms with that are doing amazing things. We're going to take that up to the state level. Look, we're not going to let special interests drive it. We're going to focus back on the basics, reading, writing, math. And we're also going to give kids by high school the tools and the opportunities and the pathways. We're going to put the money back towards that so they have success after. Look, 4-year bound, I think some of the districts do a great job. But the problem is not all kids are 4-year bound. And then we have a crazy low graduation rate in the 4 years, right? That's sad. You're setting these kids up for failure. But
not to mention the fact that those universities are doctoring our kids and sending them into degrees that are worthless.
And parents are they're not sending their kids like they used to the 4 years. They're making the kids, yeah, because who wants to pay all that money to have your kid go be indoctrinated? My friend's child he wants to be, well, now he's a young man. He's in San Jose State, right? He has to take a gender class for one of his requirements to be a pilot. The kids, one of his assignments was go out and do something the opposite sex does and write about it and give me an essay. What the heck? What parent wants to pay for that kind of schooling? And that's what I'm saying. Like when it comes to taking what we did here in Chino, taking what the other districts around California are doing great, working together as a team, bringing that at the state level, stopping the special interests, putting the money back into helping the children, especially let's face it. Special education, we're failing those kids too. But the money is too many hands are in the pot, right? Let's put the money. I say that the federal Department of Education, give all that money to special ed, right? Who cares about the rest? What do you really need? What is it doing? All those programs don't have any success. Show me a program that the federal department has had that has success. There isn't one right now. Nobody can. I've been asking all over, what programs? Why are you so mad that they're cutting them? Show me the successful programs that you're cutting, right? Let's put the money where the kids need it. And that's what I would do in California. Look, it's not going to be easy. They would fight against me. I'm one that's not going to back down. And once we get that ship turned around, can you imagine? California will now be back at the top level, and we haven't trended there for many, many years. Although we spend the most per child for schooling, right? 23 to 26,000 on average per child a year. $1,000. That's insane to fail our kids. We pay.
Hey, you can get a private tutor for that. What's going on?
That's what I'm telling you. Let's change the ship. Let's focus on that. I have connected in the last 5 years with amazing people, superintendents. You're talking about staff. You're talking about parents. You're talking about board members that we've gotten elected, that parents have gotten elected in their communities. Those are the people that I would be working with, not the special interests, the people that know their children the best. That's what we're trying to do here in Chino. And we've had success. Look, we're still up against the machine. But at the end of the day, everything I do here in Chino, everything they do in Temecula, everything they do in Redlands, everything they do in Rockland, all these great districts that are doing great things, Tony Thurmond and the rest of them with Newsom just pass a law to stop us from doing what we're doing. That's great and helping kids, right?
And I want to throw in here.
Well, Sonia, you made an important point about trades. There are schools all over the country that are having success doing that. In Pennsylvania, they're teaching kids how to weld in high school, and there are kids getting $75,000 a year jobs out of these Pennsylvania high schools.
Well, we have one locally. It's called ABC Association. Have you heard about ABC Association? They're amazing. I mean, some of our kids have taken that pathway, and they only pay a few $1,000s, but they also get paid to be an apprentice, right? And then these kids by the age of 21 are making $80 an hour. It's amazing. Why?
Which, by the way, links together with kind of what we opened the show with. And many people don't talk about this. If you eliminate the gas-powered car, by the way, okay, for many of us that worked on autos as a kid, all right, that eliminates a lot of trade jobs, okay? Because electric cars it's not just about, we're going to eliminate the gas stations. It eliminates a lot of trade jobs that people have been going for. But Sonia, I also want you to weigh in on something else to talk about how important the battle you're fighting before we get to your campaign. What's going on in Huntington Beach, and I didn't prep you this before the show, but you know what I'm talking about, No One A and B, okay, where they're literally saying, well, okay, before they even get to school, how about we put a little pornography in the library for preschoolers, right? So let's hit that real quick, because that vote, I believe, is June 14th coming up. And I've been working with the great chef, Andrew Gruel. Andrew, if you're watching, I get a free meal. And many of the people out there.
Tuesday, June 10th.
Excuse me. I sit corrected. Well, it's California. As long as you turn your ballot in sometime during the summer, the Democrats will count it. No, it's Tuesday, June 10th. So let's remember that there's special elections for school board that take place all the time. If you're in Huntington Beach, there's a special election. Sonia, before we let you go, because I literally could talk to you all night, and that would be weird because we'd run out of bandwidth, and my producer would kill me. How can people help your campaign? I just, for everybody, put Sonia's website out on social media. This is, if you understand, before I let you roll here, that they spend, I'm going to say this again, $150,000.
Mike, do you want to know how much they pay for this seat every year, or every election?
Yeah,
on average, $2 to $3 million a year. And look, they have retained this seat for decades upon decades, right? $2 to $3 million the union dumps in it, knowing they're going to retain it, right? Because they get people to believe whatever they're going to do. I mean, I can go on how easily it is because people don't pay attention to the seat. The last person that, ran at this last election was Lance Christensen, and they spent I want to say it was $2 to $3 million to run against him. So again, they want control of these kids. But Mike, I am going to need all hands on deck. This is not just, Chino. This is this state. And in order to compete with that and not have special interests, we need everybody to help in this election. I say it's not my campaign, it's our campaign. If we really want to truly make a difference, there's only so much I can do in my own local elected position, right? We need to take that statewide, and we need all hands on deck, whether it's, helping finding how we can fund, the campaign to get me across California. Look, I'm willing. I have been doing the work, taking time away from my family. You have a willing person ready to fight them face to face. So get me there. We need money. I hate asking for that because normal people don't like to ask for money, but that's the truth. We're going to need money. We're going to need volunteers. I have my campaign kickoff on May 31st. Sorry, it's been a long day. May 31st. I have it on my social media. Please go there. If you can't make it, think about maybe seeing another. We have meet and greets set up all over. So yes, we're going to need all hands on deck, Mike.
Right. And for everyone out there, what's even more fascinating when I talk about is that we talked about how the Democrats have built institutions, school boards, and technically the superintendent. There's not a party listed. They're technically a nonpartisan race. Yet the extreme left, many known as Democrats, want every bit of power to corrupt our kids in every way that we can. Sonia, you're a godsend and a blessing for everyone out there. Go to each rebuild. Sonia, you have my permission. If my team
Mike,
doesn't
before you let me go,
approve it,
can I mention one thing, please?
we're out of time. No, I'm kidding.
Let's really honestly not crowd this race. Let's please,
Right,
heard from other elected officials, they're terming out and they just want to open a committee. Let's really focus on the kids as a team. Let's not crowd it. The crazy people, I don't even want to put obviously an R or a D on anybody right now when it comes to protecting the kids. But the reality is the Democrats already have 6 people that pulled papers. It's just me right now. If we keep me in there right now in the primaries of June 2026, we can wipe them out and take this race. And I can put my time and energy on focusing on helping all the other school boards across California get elected. So I'm begging you, please tell anybody with common sense, stay out of this. Let's really just put a fighter up there to do the good work and protect our kids.
And Sonia, I'm going to stress this right now. The importance of this office cannot be understated. Mm-hmm. How much this office has been overlooked cannot be overstated. Rebuild California, for everyone out there, for Sonia Shaw, you are going to be posting in our groups, whether you know it or not. We're going to be putting the power without an official endorsement because we are a political PAC. We're going to be putting the power of the grassroots, the same grassroots, which got the recall of Gavin Newsom on the ballot, needs to make sure that we save the next generation. And the way that we save the next generation is going to be through people like Sonia Shaw and Sonia herself. Contribute to her campaign. Remember, unlike the people that stacked up money against you for $800 a month, a donation in Sonia's campaign is an investment in the future, not only of California, but in the next generation, which we need. So for starters, people stop making bad choices for bad politicians. Yeah. I want to end with this, with your segment here. I am incredibly sick and tired of small groups of people having a very large voice while large groups of us have no voice at all. And Sonia, you are our voice in the education halls of California. God bless you. Thank you. We're going to have you back on, and you'll be seeing a lot of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You guys are rad. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. We're a team, and together we can make the change our kids so desperately need.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you, Sonia, for everything you're doing.
Absolutely. We're a team, guys. Thank you.
So, one of the things,
now,
hold on.
Go ahead.
For those that aren't watching, and are only listening, her website is Shaw4CA, and the 4 is FOR, not the number 4. So Shaw4CA.com. Go make a donation. They've got volunteers. You can get involved. Go to her website. We need her. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, let's talk about a couple things here. I want to go into a couple wins that we didn't connect with. And if you don't understand, and I'm going to say something that's a little bit politically incorrect.
Oh, wait a minute. A little bit?
Thank you, sir.
Come on.
Well, just a little
that
bit here.
never happens to
What
me.
are you?
Yes.
What fun is that?
Yeah, we talk about generations, and we were brought up. Not Sonia is of the generation that we need to help fill in what needs to be done in politics. Of that same generation is Bill Asali. And if you think I'm like, oh, Netter's just having one of those senior moments, not only did Bill Asali work with Sonia when he was in the assembly, but Kurt Scott, somebody take this. What did Bill Asali just do as an attorney?
U.S. attorney in Los Angeles.
A U.S. attorney, thank you, in California.
Go for it, Kurt.
He just arrested illegal aliens, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is developing a program to take the illegal aliens right out of state and county courts and collect them when that's what needs to be done.
Right. So in the immigration courts, they go in, they have their hearing, and they say you're going to be deported. He has ICE waiting for them outside, rather than like Biden, let him go back into the community, and then we got to go hunt him down and find him. It's ridiculous. Mike is disappearing on us. Okay.
I'm going to check our social media feed real quick on our Facebook groups. I've got somebody on my team. I'll be right back.
Hey,
you guys can carry it for about 3 minutes.
I got a video that I want to show. And this is about, we had the whole thing this week, a big, huge thing this week, right? With the travesty or the treasonous conspiracy to make somebody else president besides Joe Biden, right? So this whole week we've been talking about the new book that Fake Tapper put out after conspiring with these people to hide his mental inabilities. He's going out now saying, oh, yeah, we kind of missed that, but we didn't screw up too bad. He's trying to take credit, and he's making up beaucoup bucks for that. So, Dan, Mr. Producer, if I can share my screen, I got a clip of Governor Newsom raving about our former president. There we go. We'll share somewhere in here. Let's see here. All right. Ready to share? All right, let's play this then.
I'm a little old-fashioned. I want a guy who produces results. And the results are in. It's been a masterclass. There's simply no administration in my lifetime that's been more effective producing more substantive results.
She's the best choice.
I mean, by definition, if I think this administration the last 2.5 years has been one of the most outstanding administrations in the last few decades, and she's a member of that administration, she gets to lay and claim credit to a lot of that success. The answer is absolutely.
So James Carville told the New York Times something.
So here's Newsom praising Biden. He gives a master class on how to be president, and then when they ask him about Kamala Harris, he doubles down and says, "Oh, absolutely, she's part of that team. We couldn't have done it without her." It's like, give me a break. These guys conspired to commit treason, and they're trying to sit there and now take credit for uncovering it. Duh. Everybody else already knew about it. What's their problem? They're just slow. They're taking the short bus to school, Mr. Netter.
Yes, let's talk about that a little bit. That is a hot point with me because I'm looking up something in my own Netter news this morning because I want to lay 6 names in you. That is a perfect lead on here. to one thing I want to put. So one of the things that's fascinating to me, I want to give you some names, and Kurt has disappeared for a moment, but he'll be
That's
back.
okay. We have the sunset to watch.
Steve. Okay, so let's talk about, if you know these names out there, you can go to Netter News. I'll give you a free subscription because it's free anyway. But Bruce Reed, Mike Donilon, Steve Ricchetti, Ron Klain. You probably don't know any of those names. But what I found fascinating in the press this week, as books came out saying this committee of 4 plus Biden, who at best was a senior member of this committee, was apparently running the government. Now, what's most bizarre to me is that, one, the mainstream press, while kind of reporting a little bit on the books that come out, something obviously was wrong with Joe Biden. Any even abnormal person could see that. These 4 names plus maybe Biden were the ones apparently making the decisions. And today, staff members are being grilled on that in the halls of Congress, if you will. But the reality is, I didn't know who these 4 people were. I'm not even sure they were employees of the government. And when we talk about swimming upstream against the mainstream, these are things like this show does. Yes, indeed. And by the way, God bless Joe Biden in sincerity if he's got prostate cancer, but it's odd how the story comes out the same day this other story comes out, because that's what the mainstream press reports. And Kurt, I want to roll to you and your stories here on another story that the mainstream press didn't report on a lot, and that's about solar panels. Kurt, could you talk about that for 1 second?
Wait a second. We're going to go from Biden.
Actually, today on
Hold on.
Mike's
What?
today on
Yes.
Mike's X feed at Netter Mike on X, there's a very important story, a warning for Californians, where the reports indicate that engineers have discovered unauthorized communication devices or kill switches embedded within the Chinese manufactured components in U.S. solar farms. So, not wanting to trust Mike myself, I checked with some of my contacts that are involved in Homeland Security. And not only did they affirm Mike's post, but they said there's classified information that is even worse than that, because it's in defense equipment and all kinds of other things. And China could shut down our entire electric grid if they wanted to.
And this relates a little bit to the Biden story, Scott, is what I'm leading to, because it's what the press wants us to look at. Biden's prostate cancer and other issues that come up, where they barely report on some of these other things. Go ahead, Scott. I know you want to talk about Joe.
Yeah, my buddy Joe. So you're right. They come out with a shiny object over here. Go look over here. We're talking about his prostate cancer and they're trying to raise sympathy. But in the meantime, we got Fake Trapper's book out and trying to say, hey, look, we found out that, this is going on. Why does it surprise anybody that they're also coming out with these other stories now to distract us from the fact that, hey, these guys are running auto pens. I thought what Trump said was absolutely spot on. Who was running the auto pens? Who was authorizing the use of the auto pens? And if these guys were running it, then we're going to put him in jail for treason. Even Trump sat there and said, hey, I was wondering, why do they have the southern border open like this? Joe Biden never advocated for this when he was in Congress or vice president. Now all of a sudden he's doing that. Who would do this? Who would do this to their own country? Well, now we know it wasn't Joe. It was somebody else. Just FYI, I was looking through some of that information today. Mike Donilon has been Joe Biden's campaign manager or campaign consultant since 1981. In fact, when he started to come on as president, the guy came out and said, look, I want a $4 million fee. And everybody squawked at it and said, no. And Biden said, hey, you're going to pay him as one of his cogent moments, I guess. But Donilon was a paid political consultant, and he was one of those committee members that you're talking about that kind of ran the government. Because we know Joe didn't do it. And we know Kamala Harris didn't have
what you said is important, Scott, because it calls into question whether his executive orders, his appointments, and his pardons are valid. Because if he didn't
Heck, they had a
know,
lot of
we remember from
they had a lot of
contract
those.
law, if you don't have the capacity, you can't contract and you can't act.
Right, but this I want to relate to something here that we talked a little bit about earlier. This also relates to the fact, I mean, this small group of people whose names you wouldn't know if they were scrolling across the bottom of your screen. I'm not going to ask our producer to do that because they're hard to spell. They sound like bad dishes at a poor restaurant. Probably are going to get money from solar panel. They're not elected members. I don't even know if they work for the government. From things like, I want you to think about this, solar panel manufacturers from China, where Biden's administration supplied the green money deal to buy these. In other words, for those of you out there having trouble keeping up, the government, your own government money, is being paid to screw you by a group of people that you've never met or elected. Is that a fair way you think to put
Hey,
something
the
up?
Biden crime family was on the Chinese
Pretty
payroll.
concise description, Mike.
I mean, we have solar farms with microchips in them that can be shut off by somebody overseas that are not paid for by even PG&E, but paid for by the federal government, authorized by a small group of people. Yeah, things like Karen Bass elections, the same kind of thing. I see, like I said, the same kind of thing, but this is almost even a bigger scale almost when you think about it. It's very, very scary. I want to go to one other thing which is underreported here. And Scott, do you want to report that from my newsletter or do you want me to do it? Because there were 3 stories that I think this week are incredibly underreported.
Which one?
One was who's running the country, the chips that are in solar panels. The third one is all the protests that the press seems to cover when 5 people or 50 people or 500 people assemble against Musk saving money or Donald Trump protecting the public.
So you got all these
Scott?
anti-Trump protesters, which the media likes to pump up and portray. Hey, we got these anti-Trump protesters. Of course, there's only 5, but they make it look like there's 50 or 100. But they're all out there on the street. Who are they paid for by? Who is the big funder? What is it? What was their public name?
Well, the public name is called Resist Fascism. And I want to make a little comment for everybody tonight, to kind of as a training session. So bear with me, gentlemen. When I see a name, this group is called Resist Fascism, and you look them up and they're sponsoring protests around the country. Now, for everyone out there, there are at the most 5,000-6,000 people watching this show. Try not to spread the word of my secret source. You guys ready? Google. Take that name and Google it, which is what I did, and you'll be amazed in open secrets. You will find that the Revolutionary Communist Party, RCP, yes, indeed, an American-based communist party, partially, is the one that funds the group Refuse Fascism that is funding these protests around the country. I'm going to say this once and I'll say it again at the end. Isn't it fascinating that what we call the mainstream press, the alphabet soup, ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, no matter how you scramble the consonants and vowels, don't tell you that portion of the story? I went to public school, and as you could tell, it didn't turn out so well for me. And if I can find it, how the hell come you in the mainstream press don't report that part of the story? Gentlemen?
Mike, that's a leading question. You know the answer to your question. Like a good attorney, you're asking a question where you already know the answer. And that is that the mainstream media, the liberal media, is part of the Democrat campaign machine. They are not journalists, they are political activists.
But it goes beyond even a Democratic campaign machine. It goes back, I'm going to rant. My opening rant was cut short because I wanted to get Sonia on tonight. But I want to go back to something you need to be aware of that we know. That's starting with the youth of America. Starting with the people that train and educate the youth of America, not the Democrats. That's one flag they fly under. The socialists and the leftists have taken over our institutions. And what they've done is they're training a generation of students and journalists to not tell that portion of the story. Again, they have spent a couple decades, if not 3 decades, building these institutions, penetrating these institutions that you know it's Harvard, that you know it's ABC, that you know it's colleges, that now they've gone down to the elementary schools like we saw with Sonia. We have to take them back. Bad news, we don't have 30 years. This has to be done now.
Oh yeah, and I would sit there right away. If you're if you're sending your kid to a 4-year school, think twice about it. Unless they're going for an engineering degree, architecture degree, or some technical degree, maybe law. Although I'd hate to wish that on anybody. You might think technical school is a better way to go. Look at this example that we had earlier with Sonia.
No, Scott. We need conservative lawyers. We need them.
Yeah, okay, so I'll concede. But the welder goes out there and he's earning $80,000 a year right out of high school. So he's got 4 years. He's earning $80,000. Let's just say he's not getting raised, $320,000, and that you have these other guys coming out with a ethnic studies degree, and they're $300,000 in debt, and they can't even get a job. Look at what your options are here. Colleges are not good hardly at all anymore, much less for everybody.
We need the ability, plain and simple, for a couple things. For young people to make choices based on the choices presented in front of them so they can make the choices, and when they're below an age, let's say 18, their parents help them make those choices. It's really that simple. I don't think, gentlemen, it's really changed from the time I grew up with Ben Franklin. I just don't think it's changed that much. The left wants us to believe that in 20 years, a bunch of Sams want to be Sally, a bunch of Sallys want to be Sams, that indeed all of a sudden that the South has risen again, and that everybody is racial and prejudiced and everybody's oppressed. Whoever you are, you must be. This is America, and America is made up where you can have choices. And the trouble is that the people telling us that we don't have choices are doing it so they make the money so they can have choices to get the hell out of the place. Like Newsom. Gee, isn't it strange, Gavin? You don't send your kids to public school. There's
that brings
for you.
Well, but remember too, these are indoctrination centers. You made a great point. College, high school, junior high, all the way down to kindergarten.
No, I get it. Go ahead.
That brings us up to what we're going to do and talk about a lot in our next week's show, where we're talking about the initiative that's coming around, the CEO initiative, which is basically going to give us school choice. What does the CEO stand for again, Mike?
Children's Educational Opportunity. And we're going to have Kevin McNamara on next week, the former mayor of Thousand Oaks. And don't forget too, hold on, I'm going to be doing that show remote from the Pineapple Hill and Saloon at a fundraiser for Christina Irwin. I just said a lot right there in a few seconds. But the Children's Educational Opportunity is what you commonly know as school choice. And it's about time we gave the average parent a choice as to where to send their kid.
So instead of having the kid follow the money, now the money is going to follow the kid. And like Sonia said, charter schools are one of those opportunities that public school systems have. But imagine if all of a sudden you could compete with your local Christian school or your local Catholic school and take your kid there and know that you had that money to do that. On the same token, I would get rid of Kurt, this is something I wanted to ask you. I'll throw you a little bit of a curveball. I'd get rid of the federal loan guarantees for colleges. When those things went into effect,
100%, Scott. Those loan guarantees are why college tuition has increased so rapidly in cost the last 40 years.
Yeah, because hey, you can go borrow money and it'll be guaranteed by the feds.
Well, and the other thing is, if you look at college administrations, the ratio of administrators to college students has exploded over the last 40 years.
When you look at the public schools we just talked about, Kurt, the ratio of administrators is 3.5 to 1 teacher. It has simply become a bureaucracy, funding a bureaucracy. It's kind of like if you were Intel and you had only a single worker actually making the microchips and the rest was everybody supervising that single worker. I cannot do a better metaphor than that as to what our educational system has become.
Well, but it's two things. One, those people are ideological liberals that pay union dues to fund the continuation of the fraud and the corruption. And the second thing is, you mentioned school choice. That's so important, not just in California, but other states, particularly red states, are starting to pass statewide school choice through their legislatures. And that's going to reduce the money available to teachers' unions to spend money in these campaigns for school board.
It's also going to increase, and we're going to talk about this in depth next week, but it's time we started increasing not only the choices for where parents can send their kids to school, but where teachers can teach. Teaching, and this is getting, again, my mom was a teacher for 50 years, okay? Teaching is a noble profession. Unfortunately, today, 99% of the jobs are in public schools. So if you want to do that, you really don't have a heck of it's almost like a restraint of trade. But guys, it's getting to be about time to the hour and 15. Kurt, what would you wrap it up? I want to do end on a positive note as your favorite thing that's happened so far this week.
I'll just add, my mother was a teacher in Los Angeles City Schools, and when she started, they actually taught kids important things, unlike today. I would never send my kid to Los Angeles City Schools or any public school in California today. Let's see. You talked about that. His is negative, but California has been caught with Medicaid fraud using a loophole to inflate provider payments and then divert that money to nefarious uses.
Like what nefarious uses? Because he's paying attention to his phone instead of us.
As corrupt as you can
As
be.
to anything but has to do with actual Medicare. It's the simplest way to put it, okay? And we'll do a whole show at some point. We'll have Bill Asali or somebody on to talk about Medicare and the system for illegal. So, Kurt, that's actually a good one in a positive way, because the more we prevent government fraud, the less our taxes will go up. Give me one more shot, then Scott will roll to you.
Let's see here. We talked about there's a lawsuit against UCLA Medical School for racial discrimination. We talked a bit about that in the last couple of weeks, about how they're letting unqualified people in, DEI candidates. And it's not like they're doing it in some government bureaucrat job. They're doing it for medical students who are going to be doctors supposedly someday, and that's pretty dangerous.
Scott, what would you say your two favorite things on a positive note that happened this week?
Well, one of them was that with the Medicare fraud and abuse that Trump's cutting in the administration, that's less money for Medi-Cal for Newsom to give to free health care for illegal aliens. You brought up a good point not that long ago that talked about, hey, we got a $12 billion deficit and we're spending $12 billion on free health care for illegal aliens.
Wait, I'm not good at math. Hold on.
Let's do that math. How do we do that? A couple of the other things that happened, the big, beautiful bill that passes the House, goes to the Senate, a couple of things that were in there we talked about. Some of the other ones we didn't talk about is, for those of us that are like to shoot guns but are losing our hearing, hey, guess what? A suppressor, which the Hollywood guys like to call it silencers, and they supposedly silence your gun down to the little, which is total bogus, right? It reduces your decibels, but it reduces it from like 120 to like 80, but it'll help your hearing. Guess what? Congress, in the big, beautiful bill, took it out of the National Firearms Act, which means no more $200 a year permit to get a noise suppressor to have safe hearing. Most other countries in Europe, you have safety goggles, you have earmuffs, you have a suppressor. It's part of your safety equipment. These morons think that you're going to get some gang member using a silencer and going around murdering people and no one will be able to catch them. Give me a break. So congratulations to Congress and putting some common sense into that. And then the other thing we talked about is that exemption of the Clean Air Act for California, gone. The Congressional Review Act, which has never or hardly ever been used, was used to axe that thing out, and the Democrats are pissed. Couldn't make me happy.
Muscle
Let me
cars
add
for
to one thing.
California.
That's right. Let me add to what I believe is the biggest win of the week with a different angle to it as we roll off there. The biggest win of the week is that the leader of our country acted like a leader, and that the leader of the country, Donald Trump, is really not a professional politician. Yes, he's a top-notch businessman and very smart, but we had somebody come in and be a leader and make sure that that big, beautiful bill got passed. One of the most beautiful things to me about the show tonight was that Sonia Shaw, who is just a mom, stepped up to get something done. I'm, who just a moron, along with tons of other people, 2 million of them up and down the state, managed to start a grassroots campaign to get the recall of Gavin Newsom on the ballot. For everybody out there, the real bright shining thing this week is across the nation, we have people stepping up with just ordinary backgrounds because we have to. Join us at Rebuild California. Scan them on the screen. Send us a few bucks if you can. But whatever you do, remember, it's up to you. Don't think it can't be done, because it can. Don't wait for someone else to do it. No one's coming to save you. Step up, save yourself, and help us all together save others. We'll be back next week on California Free Radio. In the meantime, keep on fighting. Dan,
Mike, one
take
other
us out.
thing. One last thing. In June 10th, there's a special election in the Newport Mesa School Board, as well as that we discussed in Huntington Beach. So if you're in Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, you got to vote on or before June 10th.
Make sure to get out there and vote in Huntington Beach. Thank you very much.